Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have a question to you. How do you call a person that needs to predict the future of the cargo flows of 2055 between Estonia and Finland? A fortune teller. I would also say a fortune teller. So fortune teller is a practice of predicting information. So, and in a way, ladies and gentlemen, we all are fortune tellers because we are believing in something that is very far away. So now the question is how we are predicting this future. Are we using a crystal ball? Well, in a consultancy business, obviously we are not using a crystal ball. So we are using a set of tools for predicting the future, which I'm going to tell you very soon about. I wanted to reflect back to the past. In about 1870s, there was a big objection against a big railway that was going to be built between a city of St. Petersburg in Russia and the port of Baltic. Baltic is quite close to Tallinn. So, and they mocked the whole railway and they called it a orange railway because it's supposed to deliver oranges from the port of Baltic to the people or to elite in St. Petersburg. So at the time, no one had any idea what this railway will be actually in the future. So, my point is that sometimes the fortune tellers, if they are having the right feeling and the right tools, could be right. But anyway, so the following you're going to listen now, please bear in mind then that 2055, it was quite an ambitious task for us. So, and I'll shortly now explain what was done. As you already said, Muuga is for many of you, is the beginning or end of the Rail Baltic corridor. It is highly important port for the region, one of the biggest ports in the region, one of the most successful ports also. And for us, the task was independently, aside from the previous studies, EY study or ICOM study, to evaluate what are the actual freight flows for this corridor and also to determine the technical scope of the future terminal, so how it should be built. The work was done by international consortia of companies, Civitta, Deutsche Bahn Engineering Consulting, Mallapainen Consulting from Finland, Entec, Kodapel Kofeng from Netherlands, and so forth. We had also many other people involved from the universities, from Tallinn University, and also some experts from Finland. So it consisted largely of two parts. One was the evaluation of the cargo flows, desk research, quantitative data, qualitative data, which involved a lot of interviews, then in-depth modeling based on cost, travel, value of time, travel constraints, and so forth. And based on this information, we then moved to technical analysis and CBA, where we dealt with the site selection, capacity calculations, technical analysis, environmental analysis, cost-benefit analysis, and finally the drawing of the two selected alternatives. This all will be available to you in a few weeks' time, so this presentation is a snapshot or insight to this. The most exciting part, I think, for me, was interviewing around 100 companies from Finland to the very end of the corridor, if we're speaking of the Adriatic corridor, to Port of Koper and Trieste. It was truly exciting to see how many companies are excited about the project. And what was really interesting for me was that some of the big companies that are active, let's say, in 50 to 60 countries, they were excited already without the actual information on the cost, on the frequency of the trains, and so forth. So these people were kind of believing into the future, and they were telling me that they are ready and as I have seen the activity around the project, they are already looking the sites closer to the port of Muuga, and they are preparing themselves for this new project. So what we did, we looked in our analysis what will be the future of the railways in competition with other modes of transportation. So obviously we looked what is going to happen to roads, and we also looked what is going to happen to the sea. For Finland, there's no question, I mean, as it has been pointed earlier, that it's almost an island state and highly dependent on the maritime transportation. So for this project, for the Rail Baltica project and for the harbor of Muuga, it is the Finnish cargo part is also very important. So what we are seeing today, so if we are thinking of a current railway system on the north-south axis, then think of it as an airplane that would need to start from Tallinn and land somewhere in, let's say, in Berlin. So the current situation is like grounding an airplane in each of the state borders. So this is how the railway business works nowadays. You have the change of trains, change of teams, and so forth. This will change after the implementation of the fourth railway package, and accordingly we are more optimistic about the future from 2025 to 2035 and onwards. There we are seeing that the rail is approximately 2 times faster. When we are moving further, then sea transportation will be a strong competitor in a more distant future to rail, but only in a certain conditions. So we draw this line, the red line, what you can see on the map. The point is that this red line represents the high competitive zone. Everything that is above the red line to the north is quite difficult for the Rail Baltic and for the Finnish cargo as well. But what is really interesting is if you move below the red line. If you go farther away from the major seaports of the Baltic Sea, then this is where the business starts to happen. And this is really, really interesting. So when we did these interviews, what was really interesting, I talked to some of the big Finnish companies and asked, how are you shipping your products to Germany? And so one of the guys, he was telling me that, well, Rail Baltica is not that important for us because we are sending it straight away to Germany, through the German ports. So then I took this information and I went to one of the biggest ferry companies. And I, of course, anonymously talked about it with him. And then he said that actually this kind of cargo is being shipped on our ships. So sometimes the cargo owners do not really realize logistics is a difficult and tricky business, so sometimes they even don't know how it's being shipped. So, and I want to make my point here. In 2017, raw traffic, and here I mean the semi-trailers between the north-south, Helsinki, Estonia was 330,000 units. And then if you combine Helsinki, Germany, Hanko, Germany, Hanko, Poland, then you will get only 290,000, meaning that already now this Finnish Gulf crossing of the raw traffic is highly important and highly relevant. So, and if there will be this fixed link called Rail Baltica, then there is no doubt that some of this traffic will move on rail because of the different reasons. We know that there is a heavy regulation on the environment is coming up. We know that the truck drivers are going to retire The last figure I got was from Germany. 250,000 truck drivers are soon to be retired, and against every 7 or 8 leaving, there will be 1 who is returning to the business. Then we also have these constraints because we are on the very edge of Europe. We have all these drive-through constraints. You have the holidays, you have the summer school, the summer holiday where you have restrictions, for example, in Poland. You have a lot of restrictions. You cannot sleep anymore in your truck as it used to be. You would need to go to the hotel. And there are also rules for your work time. So you would need to have several truck drivers. So we are observing this trend of trailerization, where we are seeing that these trailers are being put on rail. And also we are observing the containerization. So a little bit about the outcomes of the numbers of our study. As I said, we did it independently from previous studies. The result was slightly more optimistic than the previous studies. So we are seeing, and this is now the traffic between Pärnu and Tallinn section. We are seeing it from 2025 to 2045 here. So it's between 4.6 to 9.2 million tons. And we also did this little stress test because we were asked to, what if the Arctic route will happen, and what if the tunnel will happen, and what if the St. Petersburg region, with its 5 million people or more, will connect to this Muuga Multimodal Terminal. Then we modeled all these scenarios together, and we saw that 2050 and 2055, a big jump. Of course, we are not using that figure. You could say that this is a fantasy and big number. We are using this figure to profile, because we are to profile a technical solution for the terminal right now. This needs to be revisited at some point. But when we added up all these factors from the Arctic route and from the developing routes elsewhere, then this is what we got. Of course, for the port of Muuga, we had to look at the big picture. For the port of Muuga, it would mean going back to the 2025 levels, around 90.5 million tons as a total port of Muuga. And we know that port of Muuga is a big hotspot for east-west cargo as well. So tunnel would mean going back to these numbers of 2025. But as we have seen it in the case of Channel Tunnel, obviously no tunnel will take the business away as a whole. So very, very interesting business options are in the north-south corridor in connection with the Adriatic corridor. So we already see today Koper-Wroclaw, 2 trains per week, Koper-Czech Republic, 4 trains per week, Koper-Germany, 5 trains per week. We have seen successful pilot of a fresh food corridor, bringing from Middle East fresh food 5 to 6 days faster. We are seeing that the inland industrial areas of Europe would use this route. We are already seeing that Daimler in Uusikaupunki already now 500 units per week between Estonia and Finland. This is coming from these industrial hotspots. We are seeing rapid increase of intermodal Turkish cargo towards Finland through Trieste and Ostrava, where you could add cargo on the way in Austria or Poland. This is the beauty of intermodality. So a lot of potentials on this side. And what is also interesting is the question of a Far East cargo in the context of Muuga. Hopefully the next speakers will tell you a little bit more about that. So we were very careful with our estimates with the containers from the Far East. But there are a few companies that are piloting their projects and want to make it happen already very close to Muuga, and forecasting for 2025 100,000 TEUs, and 2030 up to 200,000 TEUs. So and there's also a really interesting example from Muuga right now. One of the Norwegian company who was active near Oslo moved their operations to Tallinn. They're getting their goods from China, and now they are shipping on a weekly basis from Muuga to Oslo. So this is what is already happening. So the last part was the technical profiling of the terminal based on this information. Deutsche Bahn Engineering and Consulting profiled the exact terminal setup there. We looked to the spatial and environmental constraints in 6 different locations, and then the result was we were selecting 2 locations. And what is important in the case of intermodal terminal was that it should be very close to the port. So we analyzed another location that was 10 kilometers away. For us, it didn't make any sense. So this is every lift counts, and is about money. Then we did a business plan and cost-benefit analysis and compared these 2 investments. So my time is up already, so thank you for this opportunity to tell you a little bit about our study. It will be soon out, and my concluding slide would be that the competition for the Rail Baltica cargo has already started. So we are doing this together, the 3 Baltic states, but we are doing it also separately. So sometimes you see that the capitals of the countries are disappearing. So, and the only connection to the terminal is through your country. So it's fierce competition, and good luck, and hopefully we'll see all the cargo is coming. Thank you very much.